This is what I like to call the summer chop price action. In today's video, we'll be going over the most recent Bitcoin price action, taking a look at altcoins, addressing some of your questions, and also going over some very important news that we have in this industry that just came out. Hint, hint, this is extremely bullish. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. First of all, Bitcoin, as we can see, we got rejected once more right at this trend line high. You can see that we keep on making lower highs for Bitcoin. Now, is this a cause for concern? Personally, I still think that we move higher from here, but getting rejected at these levels is ultimately not what we want to see. We want to see Bitcoin break above $120,000, hold that level as support before we can see continuation to a new all-time high, setting a new leg higher for Bitcoin. Now, what we're seeing right now suggests exactly the opposite. As you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lower highs in a row. However, we seem to continue to hold this 116K region as support. So the question is, when can we finally break out? Because this is testing a lot of people's patience. And dare I say, it is the summer chop 2.0, because we continue to bounce around in this range as Bitcoin prepares for its next leg higher. Now, in the meantime, every single time that we've hit the range highs here, it's actually been a pretty solid opportunity to short altcoins, which is what I've been doing in my free Telegram community. If you'd like to join, once again, that is the first link in my description down below. But the thing is, with this chop, we are seeing that Bitcoin dominance is continuing its uptrend since holding support at the lows right around 60%. Now, you know my base case by now. I still think that Bitcoin dominance will be moving higher. And now that we're holding this level as support, we could see further upside. We're seeing both Bitcoin and Ethereum dominate this market as Bitcoin doesn't give us a clear signal on where it wants to go. So I think that Bitcoin dominance will be increasing. I also think that overall Bitcoin and Ethereum dominance will be increasing. As you can see on this chart, we made it all the way up to just below 74%. And we've historically been much, much higher. So I think this continues. And this is also one of the reasons, along with many other charts here that I'm about to show you, why I have most of my portfolio in Bitcoin and Ethereum. Everyone screams for altcoin season. The current market conditions are not favorable for an altcoin season. I don't care what anyone else has to tell you. All of these other crypto influencers are yelling about an altcoin season just because we had this drop in Bitcoin dominance. But I'll remind you, we had drops like this before. I will remain firm on the fact that I don't think we will see a significant altcoin season anytime soon. And by significant, just if you need a reminder, it looks like this, where Bitcoin dominance falls off a cliff. Not these little corrections where we get a nice bounce and go ahead and move higher. Now, ultimately, because most of my portfolio is in Bitcoin and Ethereum, I'm not stressing about this, but I have been talking about this on the channel at length. The longer that Bitcoin stays within a range, yes, it is entirely possible for altcoins to pick up a little bit. But even now, every single time that we touch the top of this range and get rejected, altcoins get completely annihilated and Bitcoin dominance just continues to go up. Bitcoin is just bouncing around a couple $1,000s. It's no big deal, but this seems to be shaking out a lot of traders. And Ethereum continues to show strength against the rest of the market. As you can see here, this is the altcoin market against Ethereum. What do you see? Nothing but extreme downtrend here. So this means that Ethereum is outperforming everything else except Bitcoin. Because speaking of which, if I go on the ETH Bitcoin chart, you can see that we drew this out a few videos ago, expecting that ETH Bitcoin would likely come back a little bit lower. Now, no one knows how much lower this can go. This has been a very nice rally so far, but ultimately I do think that this would be making a higher low before we can go ahead and really explode, because there is still so much upside here. I will definitely be trading this pair when ETH Bitcoin makes a higher low. So let's see what happens here. But right now, Bitcoin dominance is seeing a little bit more of a pump, and a lot of people are getting frustrated because they were promised altcoin season. But if you've been watching the channel, you know that I've been talking about this for a while. Relief for altcoins when we chop around in a range as Bitcoin prepares for its next leg higher. However, if Bitcoin goes ahead and breaks up here, which is indeed my base case, regardless of how long we consolidate, altcoins will be left behind against their Bitcoin pairs. And if Bitcoin breaks down here, I think that it will become even worse for altcoins. Either way, I think that Bitcoin dominance will continue to increase. Now, I want to address a comment that I got in my recent video by you, Mustafa, who essentially said, on one hand, you are expecting Bitcoin to pump higher so that alts catch up, and at the same time, you are saying total 3 minus USDT divided by Bitcoin will go to 0.25, which I also believe it will. But how can these two extremes go together if total 3 minus USDT divided by Bitcoin will touch 0.25? It is obvious that alts will go lower. Well, not necessarily, because yes, I do think that altcoins will likely go lower and tag this trend line, which a lot of people have started to talk about. However, I'm talking specifically about altcoins against Bitcoin. So let's say in a hypothetical world that Bitcoin comes back down here, and let me just remove these drawings. Let's say Bitcoin comes back down here, holds this level of support one more time before going ahead and moving higher. Or even if it comes all the way back down to the bottom of the range and then pumps higher. In my opinion, as I said, I think we're still preparing for our next big leg. However, if Bitcoin goes ahead and breaks up from here, it will still, in my opinion, leave altcoins in the dust against their Bitcoin pair. Remember, altcoins can still struggle against Bitcoin in a Bitcoin uptrend just as much as they can in a Bitcoin downtrend. So what this means is altcoins are essentially underperforming Bitcoin, whether Bitcoin goes up or down. This is how it's possible for altcoins to come back to the range lows even while Bitcoin is pumping. For example, if Bitcoin were to go ahead and pump to $130,000 to $140,000, I think that this metric would continue to trickle on lower. The reason being also is because of how monetary policy currently is, as well as what we just got at the FOMC meeting, which I'll touch on right now. First of all, yesterday, rates stayed exactly the same, disappointing some people, which I'm not sure why, because there was a 95% chance that they would not go ahead and cut rates. But Fed Chair Jerome Powell also came out and said, we have made no decisions about September, because there was a rumor that Trump had heard that Powell would be cutting rates in September. Clearly not the case. Something I need you to consider here is that this data came out today. June PCE inflation, the Fed's preferred inflation measure, rose to 2.6% above expectations of 2.5%. Core PCE inflation rises to 2.8% above expectations of 2.7%. PCE inflation is now up for 2 consecutive months. Powell will now point to higher inflation. And if inflation is high, why would they go ahead and cut rates? Remember that I talked about this in yesterday's video and many other videos. If inflation remains sticky and the unemployment rate is nothing to be concerned about, there is no reason to cut rates, especially with the stock market currently at all-time highs. Why would they do that? Everything seems perfectly fine. And Fed Chair Jerome Powell definitely doesn't want to leave his spot in 2026 with a legacy of letting inflation getting out of hand. So, no rate cuts. And so, with this data that just came out as well, what we can see here is that the odds of getting a rate cut now in September are only 39%. 39%. This was previously 60%, 70%. And right now, it's looking like people are starting to price in that rate cuts might be coming much later in the year, if at all. And so, in these kinds of conditions, it is simply not a good environment for altcoins to thrive, specifically against Bitcoin. What we want to see for altcoins, I'll remind you, is something like this, where we completely explode against Bitcoin. That's why I've been saying, even if Bitcoin moves higher, we will likely see altcoins underperform. If Bitcoin moves lower, we will likely see altcoins underperform. The only thing that I want you to consider if you're a short-term altcoin trader, a little bit of alpha here, is when we establish these ranges, early on in the ranges, that is when we can see altcoins start to pick up again. And so, in these current market conditions, let's assume that Bitcoin goes ahead and makes a brand new all-time high, just for argument's sake. We pump up here and we start consolidating in this region over $130,000 for Bitcoin. If that happens and we do start that consolidation phase, the early stages of that consolidation phase can see a drop in Bitcoin dominance, and this is likely where you would want to leverage long altcoins if you're trading this market. This is at least what I would recommend, and these are the conditions that allow you to make some significant profits. However, as soon as Bitcoin goes ahead and makes its next big move, in these current market conditions, it will likely increase Bitcoin dominance, and altcoins will continue to struggle against Bitcoin. If Bitcoin moves up in price, of course, altcoins will be moving up in price, but they will likely underperform Bitcoin. Hope that makes a lot of sense. Sorry about that rant, but I just wanted you guys to understand how these market dynamics can work. And ultimately, my exposure to the altcoin market, as I've shared many times before, remains in Ethereum, because we can see that in this chart that I shared earlier, most of the altcoin market is struggling against Ethereum. Ethereum continues to dominate here. And so why would I have my capital in riskier altcoins than Ethereum? So right now, I stick to Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I provided some more guidance in my free Telegram group if you'd like to join. By the way, that is the first link in my description down below. And we also have a ton of exchanges that you can go ahead and sign up. For example, I do have one exchange called Phoenix, which allows you to earn Solana, and you can earn a $1,000 cashback if that interests you. That is one of the last links in my description down below. But the ones that I mainly use right now are Bluefin and Weeks. On Weeks, I have over $100,000 that I'm currently trading on there. And I like to personally also trade on Bluefin, where you can earn a $1,000 bonus if you sign up with the second link in my description down below based on your deposit and trading volume. You can go ahead and deposit cash, get cash back for trading purposes. So if you like those kinds of bonuses and you're a relatively big trader, go ahead and sign up with the second link in my description down below. Now back to the Bitcoin chart. What we're seeing right now is essentially just some chop solidation. And so how long is this going to take? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I just think that we're likely going to get a breakout from these levels. And my target has been this liquidity zone at the very least, $120,000 to $121,000. Now the reaction on here will tell me whether or not all-time highs can hit, or if we just get rejected, a nice sweep to come back down. One of the other reasons why I think we will likely get a pump at this point is because there is a ton of liquidity to the upside here. A lot of people started piling into shorts. And if we look at the 30-day time frame of this Bitcoin exchange liquidation map, before there were way more longs in the market. And what do you start to see here on the right? Shorts are piling up. If we hit around $130,000 for Bitcoin, there's around $14 billion worth of cumulative short liquidation leverage. On the left here, if we hit $104,000, there's around $19 billion worth of cumulative long liquidation leverage. This is starting to get very, very even. Before, this liquidation leverage for longs was all the way up to $22 billion. And on the right side here, almost no one was shorting this market. There was only around $3 billion worth of cumulative short liquidation leverage. And so seeing this even suggests to me that we will likely come back up as more and more people are predicting a market top, because we are seeing it on the charts, to be fair. Lower highs after lower highs after lower highs. So when will we get the breakout and grab that liquidity? I think relatively soon, but we'll have to see the reactions at lower levels, because right now, as I'm recording this video, Bitcoin sits right around $117,000. Now, in the meantime, as Bitcoin consolidates, I do have some extremely bullish news for you. And that is the fact that we have basically the SEC coming out and saying that they want to take all markets on chain, unleash DeFi, open up airdrops for Americans, and that the right to self-custody is a deeply American value. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is Project Crypto, which basically they came out and talked about how they want to make America the crypto capital of the world and what they're actually going to do to make this happen. So Chairman Paul Atkins gave a pretty big speech on this. I will leave this link in the description down below and you can read up on it if you want. But to summarize, almost all tokens are not securities. Americans should not get excluded by IP VPN blocks, explicit exemptions for ICOs and airdrops. Non-securities should be tradable alongside securities on the same platforms. Protect software engineers, streamline licensing requirements, innovation exemption to protect builders pre-decentralization. This is absolutely massive. Again, I'll leave the links in the description down below, but it looks like they're taking this Project Crypto thing very seriously. Now, of course, in the short term, this doesn't mean that we will just immediately pump. Actually, as a matter of fact, Bitcoin is dumping. We're now below $117,000. But in the long term, in my opinion, this is very bullish. Now, the last thing I wanted to end on here, which I thought was quite funny, CEO of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, surrenders on crypto live on CNBC. The reason they use this term surrenders is because he has historically been a crypto hater. Let's hear what he had to say.
Whether it's the Coinbase partnership that you announced yesterday, where Chase customers can use credit cards to fund Coinbase accounts, or Investor Day, where you said clients can can buy Bitcoin, although you caution against it, or the stablecoin like token JPMD. How prevalent do you see crypto in traditional finance, and do you foresee risks as these two worlds do become more intertwined?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's never been a new financial product that didn't entail risk. So that obviously is going to be risk, and they haven't written all the laws yet. Like, think of the rules around it, like, AML and BSA and KYC and disclosures, and when they say stable coin, which we're going to have. I'm not against stable coins, like a mutual fund. But mutual funds have rules. What are the rules going to be around stable coins? And I think there are really. So I'm a believer in stable coin, a believer in blockchain. Not personally a believer in Bitcoin itself. But you're the customer. I don't like to tell customers what they can and can't do with their money. That is a whole different issue for us. And so we're going to accommodate those things. You mentioned that we did a deal with Coinbase, so you can now move money from Chase to Coinbase. We're going to make it easier for people. They've agreed how to use our APIs, which we think is a good thing.
How the tables have turned. And that sums up today's video. Bitcoin continues to get rejected at the top of this trend line, which we've been tracking on the channel very, very closely. In the meantime, altcoins continue to bleed against Bitcoin and against Ethereum. And so this is exactly why most of my portfolio is in Bitcoin and Ethereum. We also had some pretty bullish news in terms of Project Crypto from the US government. And so it really seems like they are trying to fulfill on their promise of making America the crypto capital of the world. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.